Welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. My name is Lou Perez, and I'm happy to report that right now you can order my book. That's right, I wrote a book. It's called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Follow the link in the description or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. If you want other options on how you can buy my book, please sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. You could also join my community at thelouperez.locals.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you could leave a 5-star review, that would be amazing. Whether you're a long-time listener or a first-time, 5-star reviews are lovely. If you're looking for other ways you can support me, you can do so by supporting my sponsors. If you're into CBD products, please check out palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code Lou to get 25% off purchases over $75. And if you like cold brew, check out Black Organic Cold Brew at www.blvckbrew.com and use promo code Lou for free shipping. All right, let's go. I'm going to start it up right now.
Nice.
Hey, guy. You fucked me up, Spike. Okay. Hey, guys. Welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. I'm your host, Lou Perez, and I'm very excited to be joined by my next guest. He was the 2020 vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. They came in third, Mr. Spike Cohen, everybody.
Yes. Third place champion. Yeah. That's the podium, by the way. I made the podium. There was no podium, but I made the podium.
Who was fourth? Who came in fourth?
I believe that Howie Hawkins, and that would have been Angela. Oh, what was her last name? It wasn't Davis. Angela. I can see her face right now. Anyway, she actually lives 2 hours from me in Charleston, and she was the Green Party vice presidential candidate, and she came in fourth. So South Carolina rounding it up nicely at third and fourth.
So we know each other through like libertarian stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I actually became, I joined the LP last year when I moved to New Jersey. And it was kind of a perfect transition for me to become a member of the LP because I was at the New Jersey DMV. It's actually not called the DMV. It's like something like DMC or something like that.
Yes.
But it was such a perfect example of, government bureaucracy where I was like, I got to just bite the bullet now and do it. So here I am.
Oh, so when you registered there.
Yeah.
That's actually probably really good for LP registration numbers. People are sitting there and they're like, this is terrible. And they get up there and they're like, which party are you in? I'm like, which one hates you the most? Oh, the Libertarian Party. Okay, then I'll go with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask you, you mentioned the Green Party. Obviously, libertarians have, kind of a hostile relationship to the two major parties,
Yes.
And what is it like with, other, third parties? Like, do you guys talk? Do you get along? What is that like?
For the most part, yeah. So it's interesting. A lot of the states, there was a very targeted push to keep all other parties but the Republicans or Democrats off the statewide ballots, which is how you can get elected, is by being on the ballot. And the Libertarian Party was the only one that was able, besides the Republicans and Democrats, we were the only ones to be able to get on all 50 state ballots. And the Green Party was only able to get on, I think 30, it was 30 something. I don't remember the exact number, but a few of those that they were able to get on, it was because our lawyers were fighting for them as well as us, saying, this isn't just about our party being able to get on the ballot, but it's about all the parties, anyone who wants to run being able to get on the ballot with, reasonable standards in place to make sure it's not just, a ballot with 100,000 names on it, but that can be done. That those reasonable standards don't need to require tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of signatures or tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees or in some cases millions of dollars in legal fees. There's no reason for that. And so we've helped the Green Party a lot in terms of getting along together and stuff. There was actually some talk of my doing a forum with Howie Hawkins and Angela. I can't remember her last name at the moment.
It's definitely not Angela Davis, because I think
it's not Angela Davis. No,
she's hiding out in Cuba, I think.
Yes, no, it's not Angela Davis. I'm trying to remember her last name. Anyways, like I said, she's right up the road. But we were going to do a forum to talk about the challenges that third parties face, and we were never able to make that work. But no, I'd say we have a fairly congenial working relationship. And the other thing is that by some estimates, the Libertarian Party and Green Party platforms share 70% of our platform commonality. Where we disagree on is typically on things related to economic issues. So so they're almost like Green Party is almost they're also anti-authoritarian, and one could argue in some way libertarian in end goal, if not the philosophy of how they want to get there. But when it comes to the economic end of it, that's where we diverge as widely as we do with pretty much anyone. But there's a lot of stuff we agree on, and I think we have a fairly good working relationship.
Yeah, it's really interesting, to see the word democracy being thrown around, especially over the past few weeks about
Yes.
Do you care about democracy? But for the most part, I don't want to straw man anybody, but for the most part, a lot of people who throw that around, they don't seem to really give a shit about having any other parties involved. And it's such a weird thing. I mean, to get on a ballot, it's like you have to do you have to do pre-democracy before you can take part in the democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Going door to door.
Pay. Democracy ain't free, Lou. It's you have to go door to door. You have to get signatures. And in some states, it's absurd the difference between the double standard between what Republicans and Democrats have to do and what the rest of us have to do. So like in Tennessee, if you are a Republican or a Democrat and you want to run for any office in that state, you have to collect 25 signatures to be able to get on the ballot.
25.
Well, that's 25. Now I get that. Okay. Again, you don't want to have, 50,000 names on a ballot. If you can get 25 people together to sign it and you can pay whatever the filing fee is, okay, great. For anyone else who wants to run as a Libertarian, Green Party, Constitution reform, whatever, you have to get 50,000 signatures. And
do the math on that.
And the election courts are run entirely by Democrats and Republicans. They do everything they can to try to invalidate signatures and say that they aren't valid. And if they can, if they can invalidate one signature on a ballot, on a petition page, they invalidate the entire page. So in practice, you actually have to get 100,000 signatures instead of the 25 that the Republicans and Democrats have to get.
What is the I mean, I know why they do it, but what is the the public justification for that? What?
The public justification is exactly why they do it. So this was actually brought up. There was a proposal by a libertarian lobbying group called For All Tennessee, which I work with very closely. We're trying to get them franchised out to every state. The work they're doing in Tennessee is incredible. One of the things they tried to do was ballot reform, and they weren't asking for normalization. They weren't asking for us to also only have to get 25 signatures. They were asking for it to be brought down to what most other states are doing so that it would only be about 10,000 signatures. And of the people who publicly spoke against it when it was in committee, they straight up said, we think that you should vote Republican or Democrat. And if we put other options on there, it's just going to confuse things. People are going to think that there are other ways of looking at these. I mean, this is literally what they said. Voters will think that there are more than two options out there, and they're going to start voting all these different ways. And who knows who's going to get elected? Well, yeah, that's the point. The point is that you aren't supposed to already know who's supposed to get elected or who's going to get elected. The people get to decide that when they vote. That's your vaunted democracy in action. And that's, And so, no, they were actually, at least they were honest about, they didn't even try to pretend there was a public protection angle. It was just, well, people should be Republican or Democrat.
Yeah. I noticed anytime I voted third party, especially in 2016, I guess was the big one where, going into it, you're basically told if you're voting third party, you have no power. It's stupid. Yes. You're throwing your vote away. But then when Trump won, then it was my fault that he won. But yet I didn't have any power whatsoever,
Yes. No, you had a magic vote. your magic vote for a third party. I mean, you want to talk about bang for your buck, if only just for a value. To me, it's not only not throwing your vote away, it's the best bang for your buck. Your vote is worthless. It also is the reason why whichever second, of the top two parties didn't lose, why they lost. It is often the reason. I heard this a lot, that the reason that Joe Biden wasn't able to counter Trump more was because he had to worry about us and the 1 point whatever percent we got. And then, so that's also why Joe Biden sucks. So your vote is really powerful in many different ways. My thing is this, man, throwing your vote away or wasting your vote is voting for the same two groups of people who created the mess we're in and who are right now actively working to make it worse. Because every 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, whatever their term is for their specific spot, they come to you and say, hey there, me again. I know that I'm making everything worse right now as I'm talking to you, but if you vote for me one more time, I'm going to fix all of this. And frankly, if you don't vote for me, you're going to get this guy next to me who I work with every single day. That's throwing your vote away.
Right. Yeah, and there's always the what is the element that they talk about? It's like, look, we know that we need reform. We know that the parties need to change, but not now, not during this election. And we know that we need to get money out of politics. We need to get big money and dark money and all that out of elections, future elections, not this one. In the future, there's so much riding on this election right now.
Yeah. So this is actually a common practice of toxic abusers. So there are many people who are watching or listening to this who may have either been in one of these relationships or heard about one of these relationships. You might have actually been this person who said this. Some of you are listening. But the abuser, the toxic abuser, creates melee at all times, creates havoc, creates crisis, creates tension, so that everything is always in a state of tension. Usually it's because they have some kind of underlying mental health issue in which they thrive under tension more so than they do under like normal healthy conditions. That's a whole other subject. But what it also allows them to do is that when the person, their spouse, their significant other, their family members, whatever, try to leave them or disassociate from them or disown them, they say, you can't leave me right now. Look at everything that's going on. It'll all fall apart if you leave me right now. Well, yeah, that's because of you. So again, going back to the whole, turning around their argument, yes, this election is far too important to vote for the people who made this election far too important. This election should not be this important. From a libertarian standpoint, who is president should not matter nearly as much as it does right now. And frankly, who your mayor shouldn't matter nearly as much as it does right now. It's their fault that it matters so much. It's their fault that we're in a state of constant perpetual crisis, and it's never going to end until we kick them out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's the idea of, okay, once we get through these 4 years, we're going to change everything that the previous guy did. And it's like, I remember I did not a podcast. I did a short documentary about Sweden. And I got to talk with Johan Norberg, who I think he does a lot of work with Cato. Okay. And he's great. He's really fantastic. And we were talking about a few of the differences between the U.S. and Sweden, and one of the things that I guess Sweden has going for it is they basically know what they're going to get each election. Like, it's sort of the powers are kind of established, and this is what they're able to do. Whereas with the president, it's like new president comes in. It's going to turn everything's going to change. We're going to, whether it's by executive order or what have you. And it's like, I really would like to get to a point when maybe one day I don't even know who the president is. That might be.
And there are people out there who don't know who the president is, and that is, it's concerning. But I'd like there to be a time when it's like who your president is. Like, there are a lot of people, they don't know who like their county board members are. Right. And frankly, they probably should. Honestly, there's probably a lot more tyranny happening to them on a daily basis because of stuff that's happening at the county level than at the federal level. But I mean, wouldn't it be great if government was so inconsequential in our day-to-day lives that yeah, okay, I know who the president is. I've seen him on TV a couple times. He was talking about the thing with the whatever, but that it doesn't really matter on a day-to-day basis. There's actually a comedian I know you love as well, Norm Macdonald, who used to talk about. He said, I'm from Canada. It doesn't matter who's president here. Although now, obviously, it didn't matter. But he would joke and say, we're not even technically voting for our prime minister. We're voting for the local person in our riding, which is their district. And, when you guys talk about who you're voting for, it's like, nuclear war and, terrorism and all this stuff. When we talk to the guy, we'll go over and we'll be like, hey, what about the bridge? What's happening with the bridge there? Oh, I'm very much against the bridge. Oh, no, I'm very in favor of the bridge. Oh, okay. Well, I think I'm partial to the bridge, so I'm going to vote for you. And now, of course, now that he's died, Justin Trudeau has made that into a giant lie, that it actually does matter who's in charge there. But I'd love for there to be a day where that really is all that matters, and we aren't even asking them about the bridge.
Yeah, I remember during the it seemed like during at least the last two election cycles, the excitement or the fervor and the passion that all of my friends in California had about voting for the president. And it's like, well, we know which way your state's going. Like, you guys, I know you guys are taking to the streets and all that, but you're still doing it like in LA, like you're still doing it where you are. Oh, you bring up, Norm, who, how long has he been gone? When did he pass away?
It's been like 5. I think he died in September. So it's been like 5 months now, 5 or 6 months now. Yeah.
Yeah. And when he passed away, Bob Saget, who was a great friend of his, did kind of a impromptu little audio memorial to him. And I think he spoke for maybe like 20 minutes and just about, how close they were. And I think the last thing Norm texted him was, "I love you," or something like that. And then you turn around and now Bob Saget's gone. It's so wild. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. And I see, it's funny because I grew up watching both of that. One of my favorite memories growing up when I was a kid, my dad is disabled and retired. So I was homeschooled. And so we'd finish up, again, this is a big plug for homeschooling. We'd finish up homeschooling in like 3 hours, whatever was supposed to be done that way. We usually finish it up pretty quickly. And then we'd hang out and do whatever we were going to do that day. And one of the things we would do, we would watch, in the early days of Comedy Central, they mostly just played stand-up routines. Mm-hmm. And so I'd watch Norm Macdonald. There wasn't a lot of Bob Saget on there, but I did watch him on Full House. So I grew up watching these guys. And then to see that, like, that was their more like, I guess family friendly, wholesome comedy. And then seeing, Bob Saget doing the Aristocrats and seeing Norm Macdonald being much more blue with his comedy later on. So, I mean, I've literally grown up through into my adulthood watching these guys. And I'm definitely a big Bob Saget fan, but especially Norm Macdonald, who I thought was definitely my favorite comedian that was alive. And I guess now he's among my favorite dead ones. But he also was arguably, in my mind, one of the funniest people ever to live. I think just his way of approaching humor, even to this day, the way he would tell a joke by just re-saying what he just said has become so prolific in comedy now that you don't even recognize that didn't used to be a thing. And he was one of the people that normalized, making a joke where the punchline was the joke itself. Like he would say, Julia Roberts broke up, and I'm not going to try to do a Norm Macdonald impression, but Julia Roberts, Julia Roberts broke up with Lyle Lovett, and the divorce was finalized today. She said that she decided to get divorced when she realized that she was Julia Roberts and he was Lyle Lovett. And like that kind of thing. And that was like, he kind of brought that into the mainstream. And now that's, people just repeating what they just said. And that being the punchline has become a lot more prolific.
Yeah. So I have a book that's coming out that everyone can pre-order right now on Amazon. It's called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And in one of the chapters, I talk about the passing of Norm and how, chances are, when you heard about Norm Macdonald dying, you were probably binging clips of him on YouTube. It's just it's sort of
just about.
It's like that's sort of how Norm exists, where it's kind of like, oh man, I remember when Norm did this. Let me go check it out. And then you turn around and it's like, oh, I've been watching for a half hour all these different clips. And he's reached kind of this immortality where he will, for me, he will forever be like sitting on the couch between Andy Richter and Conan O'Brien. I don't think people watch any other clips of old Conan O'Brien bits other than Norm Macdonald.
Yes.
I don't have the science to back that up. I don't have the stats, but it's hard for me to imagine watching old bits that he's not involved in.
Yeah, I actually, so I've tested this. What I go on YouTube, I watch it, and even before he died, I would watch tons of Norm Macdonald. I knew all of his jokes. You know, his old joke about, you know, you're someone who follows the devil, and the devil tells him to chop up his family and put him in a duffel bag, and then he meets the devil and says, "Oh, Lord, host of the hoary netherworlds, I have brought you my family in a duffel bag like you asked for some reason." And then the devil takes off his mask and says, "It's me, Bob." And he goes, "Oh, Bob. Oh, you got me, Bob." And everything from that to even his more recent stuff. And his long form jokes, the jokes that would take 15 minutes for him to tell. And I love trying to work that into my shows, much to the anger of my co-host, Matt, because he also is a Norm Macdonald fan. And I'll say, like, in fact, you know, recently I was being driven in a cab and they told me about a moth. And he's like, oh.
He knows where you're going.
He knows where it's going. And it's like, we just lost 10 minutes to him just going off riffing about whatever. And, you know, in the middle of all, but I've been consuming a lot of his content for a very, very long time. And so YouTube will be like, hey, you want to watch this? You like watching apparently someone who's on David Letterman a lot. Do you want to watch this 2-hour super clip of all the times Stephen Wright was on there? And I'm like, sure. And then I'll watch a little bit of it. And I like Stephen Wright. I think he's a funny guy, but I'm like, yeah, this isn't the same as Norm Macdonald. And that's nothing against Stephen Wright. It could be any of the, you know, Louie Anderson, who also just passed away. It could be a lot of different comedians, and I could watch a little bit of it. There are very few comedians I will watch 2 hours straight of. There's just something special about Norm Macdonald and how easy his humor was, like how effortless his humor was, and how much you could tell. You know, they say a comedian's comedian. You could tell how much the hosts were into it, how much the other comedians were into it. Like, he was funny on their level. I think he's great.
Yeah.
Or was great. Now he's not. He's dead.
Thank you for reminding us that
he was great. Now
Norm Macdonald is one of Spike's favorite dead comedians, for sure.
Among my favorite dead one. Previously,
my
favorite living one, and now he lost that title.
Who's it now? Do you have one now? Who's become the living?
Gosh, who's my favorite living comedian? Norm Macdonald, because he lives here. No, I don't know. I don't know. I get, you know.
And let me just say, I hate when people ask me that question. Yeah. So
no.
I threw it at you.
No, and I'm glad you asked, because I don't know. I think I've continued calling him my favorite living comedian. It's like, but he's not, because he's dead. He can't do that anymore. He can't even tell it. I mean, he's not the least bit funny now. So no, I'd have to really think about that, because I'm not sure. I mean, I have a lot of comedians that I really like. I will say, I think one of the bravest ones is Dave Chappelle. I'm not sure he's he's definitely up there in my favorite comedians, but I'm not sure I'd call him the most funny comedian out there right now. And I'm kind of at a loss right now who I would say alive as of this taping that I'm aware is, I believe is alive, would be my favorite comedian or the funniest one. Yeah.
You know, when I think about, Norm and Louie Anderson and Saget, and I know I was never a fan of Bob Saget. I only knew him from, you know, America's Funniest Home Videos and Full House. Yeah. Full House obviously was very corny. Like, it was a very cheesy show. And
corny
humor. America's Funniest Home Videos. It's just guys getting kicked in the nuts or hit in the nuts. Yeah. Very family friendly nut hitting though.
Yes, it's a nut based family friendly program.
Yeah, but I wonder if my just pure enjoyment has something to do with just the nostalgia too, where I wonder, like, say if I was seeing Louie Anderson stuff for the first time would it still have that impact on me? I don't know. I think Norm would still hold up for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And while you were saying that, so two things. One, because now YouTube thinks I'm a stand-up comedy addict because of my Norm Macdonald obsession that again has existed even before he died. I saw Louie Anderson's first appearance on the Johnny Carson show. I think that was his first televised appearance. And I watched it and it was funny. And I remember watching it and thinking, wow, I could see how that would have been groundbreaking and like totally out of the box in the late 70s when he was doing it, or the early 80s when he was doing it. But no, it doesn't stand up the same as watching that same Norm Macdonald clip that I've seen and still laughing just as hard, because it's every bit as much as presentation as much as the content of the joke itself. I could tell the same joke and it probably wouldn't be nearly as funny because it's not Norm saying the joke. The other thing I thought of is, I think, and don't hold me, well, I guess you can hold me on this, it doesn't really matter or mean anything, but I think that my favorite living comedian right now, the one I find the funniest, is Gilbert Gottfried. I find him, I will watch, he's another one. I will listen to his clips and, or like the times he used to go on Howard Stern all the time and
the absolute best,
hysterically for an hour. He is hilarious. And even not telling a joke, just talking and saying, yes. Well, yeah, well, of course. And like, even that's funny. Like he's a funny guy. And that's not his voice, by the way.
Yeah. He's got his laugh. When he laughs, it's ridiculous. Well, on Stern, he used to do the Pope, and he used to do the Pope like mid molesting children, like talking of the Pope sounded. He made the Pope sound like Bela Lugosi.
Yes,
and it's just the insane stuff that I think he and Norm are definitely two of those comedians where I enjoy their appearances more than I do their stand-up. Being able to watch them riff, for a half hour. And actually, I'm sure you've seen this clip, but it's Gilbert Gottfried was on the Norm show or the Norm Macdonald show, whatever.
Norm Macdonald Live,
whatever he did for I think for Netflix. And they're talking about, oh God, what's his name? Michael Douglas, getting throat cancer from obviously going down on Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yes.
And they just keep going back and forth about all the diseases they would be willing to get to to do any number of sexual things with Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Gilbert Gottfried, I would risk lupus, and of course they're laughing uncontrollably. And he's like, for the chance, like it was like, I'm willing to risk lupus just for the chance to have that moment with Catherine Zeta-Jones. Yeah, no, he is that clip. There's if you go on YouTube, there's like that entire episode of him on Norm Macdonald Live. And that is one that you will, or I did, laugh uncontrollably for most of it. And a lot of it's like him just talking about, when he was on Alan Thicke's show and telling stories that were, I mean, if I were to tell them, people would go, oh yeah, no, But like, because it's Gilbert Gottfried telling it, and because he has the same 5 impressions for everyone, I find him hilarious. I'll stand on that. I will say that I think that he is probably my favorite living comedian, and he's probably dead. He probably died while we're
doing you just threw me off. I was going to ask something brilliant. I was gonna talk about how everybody was really just thrown that Norm had been dying of cancer for 9 years, and he told no one, or at least no one outside of anyone. I hope he told his son. Like, I hope it wasn't I'm sure he let his close people I don't know.
My understanding was he only told people very close to him. And what's crazy is, as someone that had consumed so much of his comedy, as soon as they said he died, all of a sudden I had all these like remembering he would talk all the time, especially in like long form podcast. I'm a Norm Macdonald nerd. I listen to his not funny stuff where he's just being interviewed on like a podcast about stuff. And he would say things about, he's like, he said, a lot of celebrities, it's a big thing now that when they get sick, and I felt kind of convicted by this because I have MS and talk about it all the time. And he's like, when they get sick, when they get a disease, they go and tell everyone, and we're all told how brave it is that they're talking about this. And he said, I don't think that's particularly brave. I think if you're going through that, you keep it to yourself and your closest loved ones, and you don't try to burden your fans with that. And it's like, crap, he's telling us. And again, this was in the time frame of when because it was like 10 or 11 years he was fighting this thing. This is in the time frame of him and he would joke in around 2011, 2012, he'd joke all the time about bowel cancer.
Yep.
He kept talking about it. And it's like, and all these things start like coming together. And then the final thing that came together for me, like I said, I have MS. So I can see.
Quit bragging, Spike.
I'm brave. Everyone applaud me for my stunning bravery, for literally continuing to breathe air despite having MS. I am a warrior. Okay. No, but because of that, I'll often like watch my interviews to see like, are my symptoms flaring up, or, am I shaky or whatever? And no, I'm not. No one would know unless I told them, because I'm perfect. Anyway, but I'm kind of like, I'll subtly notice when people are like tremoring or when something's a little off, because I noticed that in myself, and I'm like, my mouth was kind of doing whatever. And I remember watching Norm's Netflix show, and he had like a slight tremor, and they didn't really show it often. And it seemed like he was kind of struggling for words, and his hair seemed a little off, and he seemed like he had aged a lot. And I remember thinking, like, does he have an autoimmune disease? But then I saw him after the show had ended, and he looked like he was doing a little bit better. Well, that was because he was off of the chemo. And it was like realizing, like, and then watching like what his last appearance on David Spade's show, and he was like white hair, and I'm like, man, he's aging fast. But he is in his 60s. And realizing, no, he's like going through rounds of chemo and dying. And you don't, in that moment, you don't realize it until afterwards.
Yeah, I thought.
And then it's not funny at all.
Well, then it's not funny at all.
Then it's not even remotely funny.
I noticed him kind of looking bloated. And I was like, I was saying, I don't think he's the type of guy that would get plastic surgery, but his face was kind of a bloated, and there was a sheen to it, that just didn't seem, I don't know. That didn't seem, well, obviously it's natural, but it didn't look like Norm.
No. Yeah. No, I the last thing he did, it was like a TMZ interview. And while he was talking, he would like do this with his eyes and kind of like do that. And that's something I recognize that I'll sometimes do, because I have multiple sclerosis. I, like many.
Oh, that's what MS stands for?
I struggle with not one, not two, but multiple sclerosis. And it's not good. And yet I still sojourn on literally every day. And yet I persisted every day. That's going to be what my novel is called. And yet he persisted. With MS.
Is that how you got your beautiful wife? You just guilted her? You're like,
I said, listen, you should know something. I have MS, and yet I still came here with you today. No, I married her before that. She would have never gotten with someone with MS. So no, it's not true. But so I noticing little things like that, and I'm like, well, that was chemo. He was going through chemo symptoms. So, but you don't realize that then. And it's like Norm's his joke. He talks about my dad. A few days ago, my father was brutally murdered, and only now can I really look back on it and laugh.
Hold.
Oh,
there it is.
There it is. Now it's funny.
Yeah. Well, Spike, I mean, as long as I've known you, I would never think you had, anything, not anything. Well, and you look healthy. You always look healthy. This guy looks like he's got nothing. No,
he looks like he's got nothing.
No, Spike's
Who gave
always
you that hoodie.
Spike's always you always come off as a very healthy guy.
Yes.
And so. Well, what is, multiple sclerosis for people who don't know, like myself? I don't, I'm not familiar with it. And maybe tell us just a little bit about it.
Sure. So it is my cross to bear as a warrior. MS is multiple sclerosis is it's part of the family of autoimmune diseases. And what an autoimmune disease is, basically it's your immune system gets confused and confuses various parts of your body with a virus or a foreign pathogen or something that needs to be attacked and removed. And with multiple sclerosis, the thing that your immune system thinks is the bad guy is your brain and your spinal cord. And so the symptoms, anything your brain affects, which is everything, can be affected by MS. It can affect your cognitive function. It can affect your vision. It can affect your strength. You can affect your sensory. How you're touching things. It can affect your. I'm not sure how often it affects smell, but I guess technically it can affect smell. It can affect taste. It can affect a whole host of things. And for me, it's mostly sensory stuff. I deal with weird sensations through most of my body, mostly in my limbs and in my torso, and I deal with a lot of that. It has been in remission for about almost 5 years now. So what that means is by being in remission, I haven't had any new attacks or flare-ups. There has been no new damage. I'm just dealing with the existing damage that's already happened, which slowly over time has kind of, for the most part, most of my symptoms have either pretty much stayed the same or actually slowly gotten better over time. So I'm actually doing very well. And the reason for that is because when I got MS, I decided to be a warrior. No, when I got MS, I got on a good treatment that I take every month that has kept the relapses in remission. And then I switched to a very restrictive autoimmune friendly diet, basically a pescatarian diet. And I do a lot of exercise. I do a lot of supplementation. I do a lot of physical therapy. I do a lot of stress reduction exercises and things like that. Like, for example, being involved in libertarian politics is a good stress reduction exercise. And so I decided to be proactive about it because I got diagnosed in my 30s and they were already talking about, how long before I'm in a wheelchair. And I'm like, no, actually, I was trying to live my whole life and live well into my 80s or 90s and maybe even still be able to walk then. So I really decided to kind of jump in front of it. It was mostly my hypochondria that forced me to be really proactive about this thing.
Yeah. Anybody watching this video will notice that once you started talking about your MS, that's when I started plugging my book in the bottom, Chiron, right there. So if anybody, if you're not interested in hearing about, Spike's MS bullshit, you could go and check out my book available.
If you are sick about this schmuck coming onto my show to talk about how brave he is for being sick and not dying, then my book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, is available for pre-order on Amazon.
Well, I got to say, I'm so happy that you've been in remission for as long as you have. And
thank you.
The idea, there's so many people out there who they're not proactive when it comes to their health. And it's sort of, either they're waiting around kind of like a ticking time bomb and something's going to happen, or they immediately go to, how much dope can you put in me? Or how many new drugs
can you give me?
Can you give me as opposed to, changing your diet, exercising and all that, with COVID and over the past 2 years, did that impact you at all as far as, how you were living your life? Because I guess technically you would be like immunocompromised. Is that what?
So technically I'm considered immunocompromised in that I take an immunomodulator, which is a form of immunosuppressant for my MS. The thing I get every month that keeps my MS in remission. Basically,
it's your period. It's like your period.
Yeah, it's like my period, except I don't bleed. In theory, anyway. And so what it does, it without going into much detail, it strengthens one part of my immune system to keep me from getting more sick. And it weakens the part of my immune system that's most likely to do the autoimmunity stuff, attacking my brain. And so I'm not really more at risk of getting sick. It's more so that if I do get sick, that I'm more likely to have a more severe, or if I get infected, if I get a infection or I get sick or whatever, I'm more likely to have a more severe case of that because my immune system sees stuff happening and goes, not my problem. And that's kind of been trained to not do stuff like that, which is good most of the time, unless I already had, it's funny. A lot of people, when they see how fastidious I am about washing my hands, sanitizing my hands, I don't really get in people's faces a lot. I'll, hug or shake hands or whatever, but I'm not like in people's faces and stuff. And I don't eat or drink after strangers. Or I shouldn't say strange. I don't eat or drink after anyone but my wife. Just little things like that. And people thought I was doing that because of COVID. And it's like, no, ever since I got MS and ever since I started taking this, I've been fastidious for several years now. It just so happened it worked out well for COVID. Now, I did end up getting COVID last month, back in January. Actually, right on January 2nd, I said 2022 is going to be the year of Spike. And then I got COVID. And I had a pretty severe case of it. I got the pneumonia. I still have a lingering cough that's been getting better slowly over time, but it hit me pretty hard. And that's precisely because, or likely because I took this, I take this thing that kind of keeps my immune system from getting too uppity. And that's, you want your immune system to get at least a little uppity when you get COVID. But on the other hand, because I lost close to 100 pounds when I started doing my diet and exercise stuff, because otherwise I'm about as healthy as a 39-year-old Jew can be. I am otherwise pretty healthy. And I was able to do better than a lot of other people my age who are obese or who do smoke or who do, have other issues, health issues where they didn't recover from COVID as well as I did.
Wow. 100 pounds. You lost 100 pounds.
Yeah, I gained 25 back, but I initially lost 100. I like saying the lost 100 pounds part, but then I did gain some back. But honestly, I needed to. I went from about 250 pounds to about 150 pounds, and I was like, I'm way too. I looked skinny. I actually needed to gain some weight back. So the net, I guess, is 75 pounds. But yeah, no, I was a fat guy. And my this would have been my early 30s, but before I first started having symptoms of MS in 2014, and my cholesterol was always way too high. My blood pressure was hypertension. They kept telling me, you're getting away with this now because you're in your early 30s, but if you don't change things, we're gonna have to start giving you medication. You're gonna have to start making lifestyle changes. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm okay right now. Though is what I'm hearing is that I'm okay right now. And then my body was like, no, actually, we're going to start attacking your brain if you don't start acting right. And so if nothing else, the silver lining to my struggle as an MS warrior is that I had to kind of take my health more seriously. And as a result, I'm actually more healthy now than I was when my brain didn't have a bunch of little lesions all over it.
Yeah, I just went to the doctor, and I have to work on my cholesterol. I was at 132. So I have to work on that. But what pissed me off was, it was my first time going to this practice, so they take your weight, they take your height. And, the nurse, asked me, "Oh, how tall are you?" And I told her 5'10". I've been 5'10" my whole life, and like 5'10" and a quarter, at my peak. I'm not the kind of guy who would lie on his, dating profile.
Right.
And then she goes and she measures me and she's like, "Oh, you're 5'9". I'm like, "What the what? 5'9"? What the?" And then they hit me with the cholesterol, and I'm like, I got to change. For one, how do I get that extra inch back? And how do I lower my cholesterol? Is it the pescatarian thing I got to do?
Yeah, you got to do that. Well, it's a combination of lengthening exercises and pescatarianism. No, it's funny. So when a lot of times, cause I'm like 5'9", like legit 5'9". And I'm the same thing. If you're not like, I could see lying about my height if I was like a shade under 6 foot. I'm like 5'11". If I wear the right shoes, I could fool anyone into thinking I'm 6 foot, and I go, I'm 6 feet tall because it sounds so much taller, right? And because there is like all these women that won't date you unless you're 6 feet tall or whatever. I get it. I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm totally 6 feet tall, and it turns out I'm actually like 5'10" and 4/5 or something. I'm 5'9". I'm not gonna like. What's the point? No, I'm 5'10". What does that matter? Like that means nothing, right? And so I'm legit 5'9". And I will meet people and I'll say, yeah, I'm 5'9". And they're like, you look a lot taller than I would have expected for someone that's 5'9". I'm like, yeah, that's because most people that say they're 5'9" are 5'7", and they're not. They won't just like. I'm not going to pretend. Maybe if I was shorter, I'd pretend I was tall. But you're not fooling anyone. Like, you're still shorter. I don't.
In high school, I used to fuck with my one friend who had like a height complex, and the issue of height would come around, and I was at least 2 inches taller than he was, and people would ask, oh, Lou, how tall are you? I'm like, oh, I'm 5'8", and he's like, fuck you, you're not 5'8". He's like, I'm 5'8". Fucking asshole. If you're 5'8", I'm 5'5". What the fuck?
Yeah, you must be 5'5" then. Yeah. No, I mean, my thing is like, I gave up on trying to impress people a long time ago, especially when physically. I try to impress them now with being an MS warrior, and that seems to work a lot better. But like my height, I'm not like, I'm not Barry Bonds or like I'm not Michael Jordan or whatever. Like, I'm not going to impress anyone with my physicality. So why am I trying? Like, it's not like anyone's going to meet me. Yeah, I want to be in good shape. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to be here and have a good quality of life. Whenever I'd like to be stronger and everything like that. But no one's going to come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, you look like you're an Olympiad. Are you an Olympiad? Like, I mean, no one's, although now with Matt Hamilton, I guess I could look like an Olympiad with the curling. I could look like an Olympic curler. But other than that, no one's going to think like, oh yeah, you must be.
Spike knows their names. You know their names.
Specifically,
curlers.
Matt Hamilton.
Is he the mustache guy?
He's the mustache guy.
Yeah.
He's the one that looks like a trucker. And so I guess I got that going for me. And I think technically, like, some of them are my age too. So maybe I may just start doing that. Actually, that's way less stressful than libertarianism. But no, I long since gave up on trying to impress people physically. And me saying, yeah, I'm 5'11", and then I meet them and they're like, well, he looks like he's shorter, but he said he's 5. This guy must be way taller than it appears. Like, it's a lie.
Well, I got
better things to lie about.
Well, I got to say, I've been following you probably for the past 2 years, and I think you and we might have a mutual friend in Larry Sharpe.
Yes.
Yes. I think you guys have done such a wonderful job promoting liberty and the Libertarian Party, because I think you guys are. I don't want to call it messaging. You're able to communicate, I think, better than, forget about most libertarians. I think most people, and you're able to tell authentic. I'm sounding like a fucking PR guy. I don't mean to do it, but you're so authentic. Spike, have you thought about leaning into it? Like,
Spike Cohen is an authentic messaging libertarian, bringing common sense libertarian ideals to everyday households in a way that connects with them. Yes.
And now you can own the Spike Cohen apparatus that will follow you around and do your talking for you.
The Spike Cohen bobblehead with matching AI machine learning technology will be able to say things in the way that you never could, you loser. My book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, is available for pre-order on Amazon.
None of the money will be going to MS research. I can assure you about that.
0% of the money from my book will be going to helping those sons of bitches with multiple sclerosis. Seems to me, if you ask me, sounds like maybe you shouldn't have gotten Epstein-Barr virus when you were a child. Maybe you should try not doing that.
Is that what it's called? What?
Yeah. So
see how he just slipped that in there? And I was giving him I was trying to give him a compliment. This fucking guy can't take a compliment. He had to go on a really good ramp.
Part of being an MS warrior is everyone is against you. It's pure adversarialism at all times. Very similar to being a libertarian. And it's constantly everyone else is wrong but me. That's why I'm an MS warrior. No, thank you. I appreciate that. I feel the same way about Larry as well, when what he is doing on there. I mean, right now with his run for governor, the people he's reaching are people that are not going to hear our ideas in our circles. They're going to hear them by you going into normie circles and sharing these types of ideas. And I'm sure this book that isn't even available for order, I've read all of it and I love it. And this is in humor, the equivalent of libertarian messaging, grassroots libertarian messaging. That is Larry Sharpe's campaign for governor for that.
This, if you think I'm not going to blurb you, you are so wrong, Spike.
That's like the worst. You're going to put that on the back of the cover. This book is the comedy book equivalent of Larry
Sharpe's run for governor of New York.
Campaign. of 2022, not the 2018 one.
No.
Specifically the 2022 one. Yes.
Man. I want to talk to you about. You brought up you were homeschooled, and
Yes.
I wasn't homeschooled. I went to public school. Then for high school, I went to private school. And growing up, all you hear about is, oh, homeschool kids are weirdos. Every homeschooled kid I've met, or adult, normal people, like,
yes,
as normal as you can get.
Well, I do have multiple sclerosis, so I mean, there's
that's the one downside of homeschooling.
Weird.
The kid's gonna
your
get
immune
MS.
system attacks your brain.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, like what what was that like? Was it from the start you were homeschooled, or did you go to public school and then back?
No, I actually went back and forth between public school and homeschool multiple times. So, long story short, I went to Hebrew school where I insisted that I be called Spike instead of my Hebrew name, and they were determined to make me go by Yisrael, and I just kept, my name is Spike. I don't know what your problem is. And eventually they were like, all right, fine, we're calling this kid Spike. This is a phase. I'm now 39, so that's not ending anytime soon. I'm about to turn 40. And then was public schooled all the way through to second grade, and actually through third grade. And I just became more and more of a behavioral problem. And I didn't like hurt people. I didn't fight people. I didn't threaten people. I didn't steal or anything like that. I just refused to listen to my teachers because they were morons and I knew better than them on many things. And it was frightening. And some of them couldn't spell. And again, this is South Carolina. And so I didn't, and it was a problem. And my parents, because I'm, my Jewish parents, they're like, well, what did you do to make him upset? And then they're like, okay, well, then you all have to leave. And so I was homeschooled 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And that was amazing. I learned so much. My dad is he's a retired rabbi, and he was disabled. So we were able to really spend a lot of time together. He was able to teach me so many things when we didn't know. This was pre-internet. So if we didn't know something, off to the library to find a book about it, off to, find some articles from newspapers about it, off to see if there was any kind of laser discs. This is how old I am, that there were to watch about that subject or whatever. And I just learned so much, and I loved learning. And then my parents, because of a divorce and situations they had, I had to go back to public school for a few years. And it was like, I was way ahead of all the classes there in terms of what they knew. I was retrenching the stuff that I had already learned like 2 years prior. The school culture there of kids in school are so much crueler than they are outside of school. And it's for the same reason that people, adults are crueler in prison than they are outside of prison. Like it's just, that's the environment they're in. You're all forced to be there. There's this weird institutionalization that happens, and it sort of trickles down into how they treat others. That's my theory anyway. And so, and between that and just being bored with everything, I got into drugs starting in like around 8th grade. And then I ended up being even more of a disciplinary problem, which I won't discuss. Because South Carolina has no statute of limitations on any crime. And so what I will instead say is that I had a rough go of it in high school. And so I ended up having to be homeschooled 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, right back to learning all sorts of stuff. I was even high, and I was learning all sorts of stuff, got to learn all sorts of things, and was grateful for it. So in my, 6 years of being homeschooled, everything that I recall and retain now that I learned during my, childhood and teenage years was all in homeschooling. Everything that I learned is like a weird coping mechanism was probably in public school, but that's that in terms of like actually learning. Homeschool is 1,000 times better.
Yeah, when I hear people talk about, we got to bring back bullying. It makes people tougher and all that, or making excuses for that. Yeah. I always want to say to those people, because most of the time they're adults. It's like, okay, I want you to imagine every single day you come into work and a guy beats the shit out of you and takes your money, right?
Yeah.
Or, spits on you or calls you, just obscene names and all that. You're going to handle that. You're going to call the police. you're going to call the police to come and arrest this person. But instead, when it comes to kids, it's, put them back in the same room with each other. And, I have two sons. They're not, of school age yet. But my wife and I have talked about, at least in the early years, possibly doing, some kind of homeschooling. And, just looking at, fortunately we live in a nice neighborhood and all that, but just imagining the cruelty that is inflicted upon so many children.
It's not talked a lot about.
Or that, people pass it off as like, oh, well, that's just growing up, and
it's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. I used to we did these like homeschooling. Now they have like homeschooling co-ops and stuff like that. But we had like these homeschooling get-together groups. I'm sure they had a better name than what I just said. But, it was basically kids that were homeschooled so that they were socialized and had access, had the ability to hang out with other kids. And there were no extracurricular activities that were open for homeschooled kids back then. So it was pretty much what we came up with together. And I would meet those kids, and some of them were a little socially different than I might have been or whatever, because I had been in public school. But maybe I'm the weirdo, who knows? But they were kinder, and there was no bullying, and everyone was happy to see each other. And if you didn't like a particular kid, you didn't really have to hang out with that kid. You could decide who you liked and who you didn't like. And then I'd go to public school, and kids who ostensibly are the same as those kids I remember being mean to some kids because it was like, okay, well, they're on this strata, and this is what kids at my level would say to, and then realizing like how wrong that was and not doing it anymore, because I'm like, but that's how people treat me. Why would I? And realizing this is the hierarchy that's built into institutionalization, and then seeing the close parallels with prison. And how adults, at least with the kids, you get to go home. But imagine if you were locked in there, how much worse it would be, and how much more. And if you couldn't have exposure and tell people on the outside what's happening in there as easily as you could if you're in school. It's a terrible environment. And I'm not going to pretend that every public school is bad, or that every homeschool environment is good, or every private school is good. But I will say that I did not like it. I did not enjoy it. I did not learn from it. I did not feel like I was being educated. I felt like I was being corralled and institutionalized and forced into something. And I was with a bunch of kids who felt the same way. And that wasn't good. That whatever that model is, that sucks.
Yeah, and I think looking at public schools or government schools as our people will call it.
Yes.
When we look around, there's so much ingrained, I guess, in these institutions. Like you say, it's been institutionalized, where when weirdos like us try to talk about alternatives, it's almost like snapping somebody out of the norm, or snapping somebody out of it, saying like almost saying like, there's an alternative to public schooling. It's like saying, well, there's an alternative to gravity. There's an alternative to the way that trees grow and all that. I think so many people they're so in it that they can't see outside of that, and that's why I think you, being a hell of a messenger, authentic, are able to break through and come away.
The one thing we haven't had in this interview yet is you haven't asked me where I get my ideas from. That's the one.
That's a great callback to Norm. We gotta get.
Where do you get your ideas from? No, well, thank you. As one thing I've learned in my fight against MS is that it is important to be a good messenger. No, I think that that there's something inherent in statism and the conditioning that's built within it that conditions people to believe that that's the only way. Like you said, it's like saying, "Oh, we don't need gravity." Well, what are you going to replace gravity with? Nothing. And so, for example, when the Soviet Union ended, there was some very serious fear among the people. Where are we going to get our food from? if we don't have bread lines anymore, if we don't have potato lines anymore, where do we get our food? Like that's our food comes from the government. And if you tried to explain to them, oh, well, no, you can have a market and you have your own money and you go to the store and it's actually pretty good. The systems that have it, they certainly don't have problems with starvation. I mean, in the countries that have, basically fully market derived or at least a largely market derived provision of food among their poor, obesity is a problem. And they certainly don't have starvation as a prevailing issue. They look at you like you're insane. What are you talking about? Without having someone in charge who's making sure each one of us are fed? Oh, it's the market's going to do this? That sounds insane. And that's the argument we have with people all day long about healthcare, public safety, education. We can even show them real world examples of how the market does a better job at these things than the state does, despite the fact that the state has the ability to print out unlimited reams of cash to hand off to whoever they want to, and they can mandatorily force you into this. They still can't manage to perform as well as voluntary market actors in most or all cases. And they'll still look at you like you're insane. And that's just, it's conditioning. And that's why it takes really good messengers like me and Larry Sharpe to message to them out of their conditioning. It's why you need to go and buy Lou's book, my book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, which is available for pre-order on Amazon.com. Lou?
Spike, that's all I wanted from you, man. Thank you for giving. Thank you for giving it and giving more than I needed.
That was like 4 plugs in an hour.
That was a lot. Yeah, that was a lot. I might have to cut like 3 of them out because
please cut them all out.
Thank you so much, man. And where can people find your stuff and all that stuff?
Yes, I will be on the back excerpt section of the book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, at least 3 times. My website is spikecohen.com, and my social media is Facebook. I own that. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. I'm on TikTok for the kids, and I'm on all the social media platforms. My website is spikecohen.com. That keeps up to, that has a schedule of my upcoming events that you can come out to if you are so inclined to meet people in person. I'd be happy to meet you and talk with you and answer any questions you have. And you certainly follow me on social media. I have 2 podcasts that I do on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern live on Muddied Waters Media. That's available on all podcasting platforms, all social media platforms, Muddied Waters Media. And my book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, is available for pre-order on Amazon.com. It's my book now. After 5 plugs, it's now my book. That's homesteading. I homesteaded it.
Spike, thank you so much. I'm gonna end the broadcast and then I'm gonna say goodbye. Thank you so much for listening. And again, please order my book, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy. Just follow the link in the description or head over to Amazon and search for Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And please subscribe to my podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Why not? Sign up for my newsletter at thelouperez.com. And if you want other ways to support my work, you can join thelouperez.locals.com. And of course, be sure to support my sponsors, palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code Lou for 25% off purchases over $75, and Black Organic Cold Brew, BLVCKBREW.com. Use promo code Lou for free shipping. Thank you.